There are moments in life when you begin to sense that something unseen is shaping your path, moments when comfort leaves quietly, when ease withdraws without explanation, and when the world you once fit into no longer recognizes you. This is not misfortune. This is not punishment. This is the weight of purpose pressing gently, then firmly, against your soul. When God places a mark on a life, the journey does not become easier, it becomes meaningful. You may feel misunderstood, stretched, tested beyond reason, yet strangely protected in ways you cannot explain. Doors close without warning, people drift without apology, and silence becomes louder than noise. Still, something within you refuses to surrender. This is the sign of a calling that cannot be ignored. Not everyone is chosen to walk this path, because not everyone can endure what comes with it. Anointing is not a crown, it is a burden carried before it is ever seen. And if you are listening closely, you will realize that every trial, every delay, every lonely night has not been sent to destroy you, but to prepare you for an impact far greater than your comfort ever was. Isolation that was not your choice. There is a kind of loneliness that arrives without invitation, without explanation, and without mercy. It does not come because you failed, and it does not come because you withdrew. It comes because something greater than comfort has been assigned to your life. When God dangerously anoints a person, the first thing he often removes is noise. Friends slowly become distant, familiar spaces feel foreign, and conversations that once flowed now feel shallow and exhausting. You look around and wonder how you ended up standing alone when you never asked to be. But this isolation is not abandonment, it is alignment. It is the deliberate pulling away from distraction so that purpose can finally speak without interruption. The anointed are not separated because they are weak. They are separated because they are being prepared to carry weight that crowds would only dilute. This isolation hurts precisely because it is undeserved. You did not betray anyone. You did not change your heart. You simply outgrew environments that could no longer hold what you were becoming. And growth, real growth, always creates distance. When God begins to shape a person for impact, he removes borrowed identities and borrowed strength. He strips away validation that comes from people so that dependence can return to him alone. This is why isolation feels heavy. It forces you to confront who you are without applause, without reassurance, without constant affirmation. In that quiet, insecurities rise, doubts speak louder, and old wounds resurface. But this is not cruelty, this is refinement. Fire does not ask permission before it purifies. In isolation, you begin to hear thoughts you once drowned out. You reflect on patterns you once ignored. You start noticing truths you were too busy to face. This is where character is forged, not in public victories, but in private endurance. The dangerously anointed are taught to stand steady when no one is watching, to remain disciplined when no one is rewarding them, and to keep their integrity intact when shortcuts would be easy and unnoticed. Isolation becomes the training ground where motives are purified. You learn whether you truly desire purpose or merely recognition, and many cannot endure this stage because it demands patience without promises and faith without evidence. What makes this isolation different is that it comes with protection. Even in loneliness, you are preserved. Things that should have destroyed you somehow did not. Situations that could have ended you only reshaped you. You may feel exposed emotionally, but spiritually, you are being covered. This is the paradox of divine isolation. It feels empty, yet it is full of unseen activity. God works most deeply when he works quietly. While others assume you have been forgotten, something eternal is being constructed within you. Strength is forming without noise. Wisdom is growing without announcement. There is also a clarity that comes with this season. When the crowd leaves, confusion leaves with it. You begin to see people more clearly, motives more honestly, and yourself more truthfully. You recognize which relationships were built on convenience rather than connection, and which bonds were sustained by habit rather than purpose. This realization can be painful, but it is necessary. Anointed lives cannot be entangled with every hand that reaches for them. Isolation teaches discernment. It sharpens your ability to recognize what belongs in your future and what must remain in your past. Many mistake this season for failure. They assume something went wrong because everything feels slow, quiet, and stripped down. But nothing has gone wrong. In fact, something has gone right. God often hides his most dangerous instruments before he uses them. He conceals them from unnecessary attention, premature exposure, and destructive opinions. Visibility without preparation destroys more destinies than hardship ever could. Isolation is not a delay. It is protection from being revealed too soon. And when this season begins to lift, you will notice something profound. You no longer fear being alone. You no longer chase belonging at the cost of truth. You no longer beg for spaces that once rejected you. Isolation will have taught you self-leadership, spiritual maturity, and emotional independence. You will walk back into the world quieter, steadier, and far more grounded than before. Not desperate to be seen, because you finally see yourself clearly. If you are in this season now, understand this. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Isolation that was not your choice is often the loudest evidence that your life carries purpose beyond comfort. And when the time comes, when the silence breaks and the calling becomes visible, you will realize that this lonely road was not meant to weaken you. It was meant to make you unshakable. Resistance wherever you go. There is a strange and unsettling pattern that begins to follow those who are dangerously anointed by God. Resistance appears without warning and without clear cause. You enter rooms with peace in your heart, yet tension rises. You speak with sincerity, yet your words are questioned. You offer honesty, yet it is received as threat. This resistance does not come from your actions alone. It comes from what your presence represents. Anointing carries authority before it carries recognition, and authority unsettles systems built on comfort, control, and compromise. You are not seeking conflict, yet conflict finds you, because light does not need permission to reveal what has been hidden. What makes this resistance confusing is its subtlety. It is rarely loud or obvious. Instead, it appears as misunderstandings that refuse to clear, doors that close without explanation, and judgments that form before you have spoken. People may label you as difficult, intense, or distant, not because you are, but because you cannot be easily controlled or reduced. The dangerously anointed often trigger discomfort in others simply by being aligned. Your clarity exposes confusion. Your integrity highlights inconsistency. Your refusal to pretend challenges those who survive by performance. Resistance then becomes a reaction, not an accusation. This is why you must understand that opposition is not always a sign of error. Sometimes it is confirmation. If every environment welcomes you without tension, it may be because you have adapted too much. Purpose does not blend in, it stands out, and standing out invites friction. Those who carry divine assignment often become mirrors, reflecting back truths others are not ready to face. Not everyone who resists you is against you personally. Many are struggling internally with what your presence awakens within them. The most difficult part of this resistance is learning not to internalize it. When opposition follows you long enough, the temptation is to assume fault. You begin to question your tone, your intentions, your very identity. But the dangerously anointed must learn a critical discipline, discernment over self-condemnation. You are not called to shrink so others can remain comfortable. You are not required to dim clarity so others can avoid responsibility. Resistance is not a command to disappear, it is a signal to remain grounded and steady. This resistance also serves a deeper purpose. It teaches you restraint. Anointed individuals often possess insight, perception, and awareness far beyond their environment. But not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every battle needs to be fought. Resistance trains you to choose wisdom over reaction. It teaches you when to speak, and when silence carries greater power. Those who are dangerously anointed learn that authority is not proven through argument, but through consistency. You do not have to defend light. It reveals itself in time. Over time, you will notice another shift. The resistance begins to separate people. Some will distance themselves, unable to reconcile their comfort with your clarity. Others will lean closer, drawn to the steadiness you carry. This separation is not cruelty, it is filtration. Purpose requires the right witnesses, not the largest audience. Resistance removes those who would eventually hinder you, while making space for those aligned with your assignment. There will be moments when this resistance feels unfair, when your loyalty is questioned, when your sincerity is doubted, when your silence is misinterpreted as arrogance and your strength mistaken for coldness. In those moments, remember this: anointing is often recognized before it is understood. People may sense something on you that they cannot explain, and what cannot be explained is often resisted. Eventually, resistance stops shaping you and starts revealing others. You become less reactive, less defensive, more anchored. You stop trying to be understood by everyone and focus on being aligned with truth. This is maturity. This is growth. This is the transformation resistance was meant to produce. If you are facing resistance wherever you go, do not rush to erase yourself to fit the space. You were not created to be easily absorbed. You were created to carry impact. Resistance is not proof that you are walking the wrong path. It is often evidence that you are walking the right one, with clarity, conviction, and purpose that cannot be ignored. Unusual strength in silent suffering. There is a strength that does not announce itself, a resilience that does not seek recognition, and an endurance that survives without applause. This is the strength found in those who are dangerously anointed by God. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not perform for sympathy or validation. Instead, it holds steady in silence, absorbing pressure that would have shattered others. You carry weight in your private world that no one sees, yet you continue to show up with composure, restraint, and clarity. This is not emotional numbness. It is disciplined endurance formed through unseen trials that shaped you from the inside out. Silent suffering teaches you how to endure without becoming bitter. You feel deeply, yet you refuse to collapse into despair. You experience disappointment, betrayal, and loss, yet you do not allow these experiences to redefine your character. This is the paradox of divine strength. It allows pain to pass through you without allowing it to poison you. Many can survive hardship by hardening their hearts, but the anointed are taught to remain open without being fragile. That balance is rare, and it is earned through suffering that could not be escaped, only endured. This strength develops because you were not rescued immediately. Answers were delayed. Relief did not come on schedule. You prayed and waited, struggled and remained faithful, questioned and still moved forward. Over time, something within you learned how to stand without leaning on constant reassurance. You discovered that faith is not proven when everything works out, but when you continue even when nothing makes sense. Silent suffering teaches you that strength is not the absence of fear, but the decision not to surrender to it. There is also humility forged in this season. When suffering happens quietly, pride has no stage. There is no audience to impress, no recognition to collect. You learn who you are without affirmation and who you serve without reward. This humbles the spirit and clarifies intention. The dangerously anointed do not endure suffering to be seen as strong. They endure because surrender is not an option. Their strength is rooted in responsibility, not ego. What many do not realize is that silent suffering sharpens discernment. When you have walked through pain alone, you learn to recognize it in others. You become perceptive, compassionate, and emotionally intelligent. You notice what is unsaid, what is hidden behind smiles, what is disguised as strength. This does not make you cynical. It makes you wise. Suffering teaches you how to read between the lines of human behavior, and that wisdom later becomes a source of guidance for others. There will be moments when you wonder why your strength goes unnoticed, why your endurance is unacknowledged, why others are celebrated for far less. In those moments, understand this: God often hides his strongest work until the time is right. Strength developed in silence is not meant to be admired. It is meant to be trusted. When pressure increases later, when leadership is required, when others are overwhelmed, your quiet strength will suddenly become visible, not because you announced it, but because it can be relied upon. Silent suffering also protects you from becoming reckless with power. Those who receive influence without pain often misuse it. but you have been shaped by restraint, patience, and endurance. You understand consequences. You respect process. You do not rush to speak or act without consideration. This makes your strength safe. It makes your presence stabilizing rather than overwhelming. And one day you will look back and realize that what felt like endless endurance was actually preparation. Every moment you held yourself together, every night you cried quietly, every day you chose integrity over escape, something permanent was being formed within you, a strength that cannot be faked, a resilience that does not depend on circumstances. If you carry unusual strength in silent suffering, know this: you were never meant to break loudly. You are meant to endure quietly so that when your time comes, your presence alone will speak with authority. This strength is not accidental. It is evidence of an anointing that was tested before it was trusted, a relentless pull toward truth. There is an inner tension that never seems to rest, a quiet insistence within you that refuses to accept what is false, shallow, or misaligned. This is the relentless pull toward truth that marks those who are dangerously anointed by God. You are not comfortable with appearances. You are not satisfied with surface-level explanations. Even when pretending would be easier, something within you resists it. You feel an internal discomfort when words do not match actions, when environments reward image over integrity, and when silence is used to protect what should be confronted. This pull is not stubbornness or rebellion, it is alignment. Your spirit recognizes truth as necessity, not preference. This hunger for truth often makes life more difficult, not easier. You cannot stay long in places where dishonesty is normalized. You struggle to maintain relationships built on avoidance rather than accountability. You feel drained by conversations that dance around reality instead of naming it. As a result, you may be labeled intense, serious, or difficult to please. But the truth is simpler. Your soul cannot breathe in false environments. Anointed individuals are wired for clarity because confusion weakens purpose. You are not chasing perfection. You are seeking coherence between what is spoken, what is lived, and what is believed. This pull toward truth begins inward. Before you challenge the world, you are forced to confront yourself. You question your motives, examine your intentions, and revisit your assumptions. You do not excuse your flaws, you face them. This self-honesty is uncomfortable, but it is essential. Those who avoid their own truth often misuse authority later, but you have been trained to correct yourself before correcting others. This is why your words carry weight when you speak. They are not borrowed opinions, but tested convictions. Over time, truth becomes a boundary. You stop negotiating with what violates your values. You no longer explain away behavior that conflicts with principle. You learn that peace is not found in agreement, but in alignment. This is where many relationships shift or end, not because you became harsh, but because you became clear. Clarity is threatening to those who survive on ambiguity. Your refusal to participate in pretense forces others to confront their own compromises, and not everyone is willing to do that. This pull also affects your speech. You become measured, intentional. You understand that truth spoken without wisdom can wound, and silence used wisely can protect. You do not speak to dominate conversations, you speak to illuminate them. And when speaking would create more noise than clarity, you choose restraint. This balance between honesty and wisdom is rare, and it is developed through seasons of observation, listening, and learning when not to speak. There will be moments when this commitment to truth costs you comfort. You may lose opportunities that require compromise. You may walk away from spaces that reward silence over integrity. You may feel alone for choosing principle over popularity. But what you gain is something far more valuable: internal consistency. You sleep without pretending. You stand without guilt. You move forward without carrying the weight of self-betrayal. Truth simplifies your life even when it complicates your path. Eventually, this relentless pull toward truth positions you as a reference point for others. People may not always agree with you, but they will trust you. They will come to you when clarity is needed, when confusion overwhelms them, when difficult decisions must be made. Not because you claim authority, but because you embody alignment. Truth lived consistently becomes credibility. If you feel exhausted by false environments and restless in shallow spaces, understand this. Your discomfort is not a flaw. It is a signal. You were not designed to survive on illusion. You were designed to stand on truth, even when it costs you ease. This relentless pull is evidence of an anointing that cannot coexist with deception. And in time, that commitment to truth will become the foundation of influence that is steady, trusted, and unshakable. Attacks that intensify when you grow. There is a noticeable pattern that unfolds when a person is dangerously anointed by God. The moment growth becomes undeniable, pressure increases. Not gradually, but suddenly. Just as you begin to gain clarity, momentum, or inner peace, unexpected resistance rises. Confusion appears where there was certainty. Delays interrupt progress. Emotional weight intensifies without a clear external cause. This is not coincidence, and it is not imagination. Growth provokes opposition because expansion threatens what depends on your limitation. When you move closer to purpose, forces that benefited from your silence or hesitation begin to react. These attacks rarely arrive in obvious forms. They are subtle, psychological, and exhausting. Doubt creeps into moments that were once confident. Fatigue settles in without physical explanation. Old wounds resurface at inconvenient times. You may feel tempted to retreat, to question whether growth is worth the cost. This is how pressure works. It does not always try to destroy you directly. Sometimes it tries to slow you down by overwhelming your mind. The dangerously anointed must learn that not every struggle means something is wrong. Some struggles are signs that something is activating. One of the most difficult lessons in this season is learning not to interpret resistance as rejection. When attacks increase, the instinct is to assume disapproval from people, from circumstances, even from God. But often, the opposite is true. Growth exposes you to responsibility, and responsibility attracts testing. Just as strength is proven under weight, purpose is revealed under pressure. You are not being pushed back. You are being stretched forward. This season demands emotional discipline. You cannot afford to react to every disruption or internal storm. Attacks are designed to provoke impulsive decisions, emotional withdrawals, or compromises that undo progress. This is why maturity becomes essential. The anointed learn to pause instead of panic, to reflect instead of react, and to remain anchored when instability tries to pull them off course. Growth requires steadiness more than speed. There is also a refining aspect to these intensified attacks. They expose remaining weaknesses, attachments that no longer serve you, habits that limit clarity, fears that still influence your choices. What surfaces in this season is not meant to shame you, it is meant to be addressed. Growth does not mean perfection, it means awareness and correction. Each challenge becomes an invitation to align more fully with purpose rather than retreat into familiarity. Another reality of this stage is isolation, revisiting you in a different form. People who once supported you may grow distant. Some will not understand your evolution. Others may feel threatened by your clarity or independence. This can be painful, but it is also purposeful. Growth requires environments that can sustain it. Not everyone who walked with you in earlier stages is equipped to walk with you now. This separation is not punishment, it is repositioning. What makes these attacks dangerous is not their intensity, but their timing. They arrive just before breakthroughs, just before expansion, just before visibility. This is why perseverance becomes non-negotiable. You must resist the urge to abandon progress because of discomfort. Growth is not always accompanied by peace. It is often accompanied by pressure that demands endurance. The anointed understand that quitting at this stage would mean surrendering just before activation, and then something shifts. Slowly, quietly, you realize that what once shook you no longer does. The attacks lose their power to derail you. You remain focused, clear, grounded, not because challenges disappeared, but because you changed. Growth transformed your capacity. Pressure became familiar. Resistance became manageable. You learned how to carry weight without losing direction. If you notice that challenges increase as you grow, do not retreat. Do not assume failure. Understand what is happening. You're approaching something meaningful. Opposition intensifies when purpose is near. These attacks are not signs to stop. They are signals to remain steady. Growth always demands endurance before it brings fulfillment. And if you continue forward with clarity, discipline, and faith, you will discover that every attack was not meant to destroy you, but to confirm that your life carries an assignment worth resisting.